Hi there, I'm Peter Marks, a former theater critic who's gone rogue.
I love that. Love the rogues. And I'm Elizabeth Vincentelli, and I write about theater for the New York Times. And welcome to another episode of Marks and Vincentelli, the only theater podcast you really need to bother with.
Indeed.
I'm saving you time. Forget the others. You're at the right place.
And today, we're going to take you to another part of the country, right from our own locations here in New York. You know, as our listeners know, we both are based in the city, and we tend to spend a lot of time talking about theater here, on the East Coast. But today, thanks basically to Elizabeth Vincentelli, we're making one of our occasional jaunts outside the Holland Tunnel. For those of you who don't know New York, that's a leading way to get into the city.
Or out of.
And this whole episode is really as a result of an article that you wrote.
That's right. So last November, I flew to Las Vegas to report on theater there, and not Cirque or the touring Broadway shows. And today we're going to talk to someone who is very actively involved in that independent Las Vegas scene. And our guest is Daz Weller. And Daz is the artistic director of Vegas Theater Company. He's going to tell us what it's like to make theater off the strip in Las Vegas, which even has an arts district.
Wait a minute. You're telling me that you went to an editor at the New York Times and you said, I need to go to Las Vegas to report on the theater there. And they said,
are you nuts? What? No, it did. It took me a little while to get through, I've got to say. But it's when I have something in my head, it's like it took me like years to get my story on Creed going. And this one took almost as long.
Creed being Creed, Colorado theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I knew there was something happening there. I don't know. I had a good hunch. And I'm very happy to report that it really was realized. There's three really interesting professional, and I'm putting the emphasis on professional because there's also a very thriving amateur scene in Las Vegas, but I wanted to focus on the ones that pay their actors. So there's basically three. One is Majestic Repertory Theater, which does a lot of immersive productions and just had a big local hit with Scream, which was a musical parody of the movie Scream.
Screamed?
Screamed. It's actually reopening in Los Angeles in March, I think. March or
that's
April.
Cool.
And then there's a company called A Public Fit, where I saw a very good version of Tracy Letts's The Minutes. Very, very good production of that play. That play is actually, I would say, it's so well put together that it's almost impossible to miss, but they did a very good version of it. And then there's Daz Weller's Vegas Theater Company, which does a bit of everything. And it would have been great to have all three artistic directors on the show. It gets a little messy, as we've learned the hard way. So we're going to keep it a little simple today with just Daz. Daz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where are you? Are you actually calling?
I'm in my home in Las Vegas, live from Las Vegas.
Oh, fantastic. I've always wanted to hear that on the podcast. So, can you give us well, first of all, you're Australian, as our alert listeners may have picked up already. And I was wondering, can you tell us how you ended up in Las Vegas? Because actually, how does one end up in Las Vegas doing theater?
Exactly. I mean, how does one end up in Las Vegas? Well, you know, like many people here, I'm a transplant of the entertainment industry. I never imagined in a million years that I would move to the United States, let alone Las Vegas. And my husband is a singer and has been singing with the same guys since he was 15, and in a group called Human Nature. And so they had quite a big career back in Australia, and then did some Motown albums, which opened some doors for them in the States, and they ended up getting a room on the Strip. And so we'd been dating about 5 years. He was like, hey, we got a room on the Strip. We're going to be doing our Motown show over there. I was like, okay, cool. I'll see you in 6 weeks. No one wants to see 4 white guys singing Motown in the States. And I was clearly wrong. So that's what brought me over here.
Were you an actor?
I was an actor, yeah. I trained at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, did like a 3-year intensive vocational actor training program, and graduated and went to work mostly in the theatre industry. I mean, my first gig was with the Sydney Theatre Company. I did Gary Hines' production of The Beauty Queen of Leonardo.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
When the Sydney Theatre Company
Great
brought it
play.
over. Oh, amazing play. I mean, I was 20 at the time. I had no idea what a privilege it was to be
Was that before Kate Blanchett?
That was. Robin Nevin had just taken over as artistic director. I think Wayne Harrison had programmed the play. But I got to, we did it at the Sydney Theatre Company, and Gary came over for the last 10 days of rehearsal and, whipped us into shape. She was quite the taskmaster. And then all the other theatre companies around the country picked it up. And so I was on tour with that play for ages. So, yeah, had an acting career in Australia, and that's really all I ever wanted. By the time this Vegas thing came up, I was 31 and had just finished a lead role in a TV sketch comedy show and was booking theatre gigs regularly. I paid my dues. I was like, the chickens were coming home to roost. And and then it was time to pack it all in and move to Las Vegas. And
Where you discover what?
I discovered, I was really dismayed. I was like, okay, landed on the ground. Where are the theatre companies here? And there were none. I mean, there are some small amateur companies, and there's some sort of summer stock-ish amateur sort of companies that produce musicals. But really, for the work that I'd been doing, there was nothing here. And it was really, I was really dismayed by it. But bit by bit started to discover that it was such a fertile ground for the possibilities of professional theatre. I mean, as you know, like the city has sort of really grown over the last 15, 20 years and has taken on an identity that where we don't just see ourselves as, servicing the tourist market anymore, which I think is really the way we perceived ourselves and were perceived for a long time. And so there's 2.5-3 million people here, and there's not one, regional professional theatre company, which for a city of our size is really unusual. Cincinnati and Portland and, other comparable sized cities have 2, 3, 4, 5 professional companies.
How do you explain that? Do you think it's because the Strip, like I'm going to say the Strip to refer to all the stuff that people usually identify with Vegas, that is Cirque du Soleil or the headliners, So do you think the Strip was kind of sucking up all the attention and there was no oxygen left for theater? Like, how do you explain that?
I think it's a few things. Yes, there are like 200 theaters over there that service the tourist market, and they create amazing things. Like there's lots of frothy entertainment, and there's also some really, state of the art spectacle style theater. Like you look at something like Car that Cirque du Soleil produced, Robert Lepage directed it. It's like extraordinary. There's nothing, and it's not a show that can travel. It's custom built for the theater that it's in. And so, yeah, I think in a way that ecology sucked up the possibilities for what could happen outside of the Strip. Also, I think the city never took itself seriously enough. Like we've always been seen as a cultural underdog of the country. No one ever expects anything from Las Vegas apart from, tits and ass and spectacle. And that's why people come here. And so that's how the city started to see itself in some ways.
Yeah, I've been to Las Vegas several times, and I came in professional capacity to reinforce the impression of what Las Vegas was as an entertainment venue. Not coming to see, True West in Las Vegas,
Right.
but obviously to see O and to see, the Showgirls, this when they were still, and to see a show about New York at New York. I mean, there were these. But we had, I think part of the problem was the rest of the world had stamped Vegas as this kind of entertainment venue, and if there was no indigenous community coming up with this, you were sort of trapped in that sphere, so to speak.
Exactly. I mean, we've always we see ourselves, and this has been perpetuated, is still being perpetuated today by leaders of the city and cultural leaders, that we've been perpetuated as sort of a cultural importer. We're a great cultural importer. Bring your product here, and we will make it look the best it possibly can, and we have an audience for you that's built in. But what's become sort of interesting over the years is going, well, how do we, now that we're a city that actually takes itself seriously, and certainly October 1, the shooting, and really changed things for Las Vegas, and solidified a lot of kind of sort of siloed parts of the city that came together and went, oh, we are this city. We are its people, and we need to support this place. And so it brought us together in a new way. And so I think then moving forward and trying to change the perception of the place from being a cultural importer to working towards being a cultural incubator, and then maybe, a cultural exporter. And Vegas has had some great, cultural exports, certainly in the music industry, but not so much in the world of theater or live performance.
So what was interesting to me when I went to visit you guys in November was that there clearly is theater there, and I was very impressed by how resourceful and how much you guys could do with not very much support, like institutional support. I think maybe it's growing a little bit, but I think it seems that you're reaching a point where the local population is paying attention more. Like, not the people who are flying in to gamble and go see Sphere, but the people who live there and work there and are thinking, well, maybe tonight I want to see something by Arthur Miller, or a new playwright, or a new musical, not something that's touring, not a Broadway show. I mean, of course, people will go see the Wicked tour, but your company, for instance, created like an original musical and premiered it like last year. So there's new stuff happening. So how do you connect with the city and with the local population to say, hey, we're here, we're doing this?
Well, we've been around for 23 years. I mean, I call us the longest startup in history. I mean, we've been a startup for 23 years. But over that time, you build a core following of people that turn up and see that the work that you do is consistently strong and keep turning up. And like all theatre, I think for me, it's so much about place. It really is about, in our little theatre at the moment, this postage stamp of land that we are on, and what does that mean to the people who live on it or around it? And so what is our responsibility then for the stories that we go forward and tell on that little postage stamp of land? And that's the beauty of going to the theatre, is you get to commune with your people. And it's church for the secular, I call it. So we come together and we share ideas, and that has value. And certainly most other cities in the country have been appreciating that value for a long time. Vegas is nebulous.
But you leaned in, Daz, to you called it the Vegas Theater Company,
right?
You were not going to, your identity. You were saying, we are part of the fabric of this place. We are showing you a different part of the fabric. But I wondered how hard that was at the beginning.
Well, I wasn't there at the beginning. We were founded as Cockroach Theatre Company by 5 UNLV graduates.
You changed the name to Vegas.
Yeah.
It's a good name, though.
I came in 2017 and directed my first play and quickly sort of moved up through the ranks.
What was that?
It was Spinning into Butter by Sarah Gilman.
Oh, sure. I know that play.
Rebecca Gilman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it did really well. I mean, it was a 20-something-year-old play at that point, so it's always a good test of a play to see, where it kind of sits at that 20-year mark. And I don't know, it was showing its age a little bit, to be honest with you, by the time I did it in 2017. But came in and I found, the Cockroach has a loyal following, and we're a 501c3. Our business is still Cockroach Inc., our 501c3. But after a couple of years in, I found I kept talking about why we were called what we were called rather than why we are doing what we're doing. And so it became so much a conversation about a name that didn't really fit us anymore. The group who started it went around at midnight and did shows in loading docks around the city, and they were really an itinerant company that was popping up theatre at midnight and, you know, doing some crazy experimental stuff. And so by the time we'd been in our current theatre at Art Square, which we built out from 2012, we were one of the most established companies in town. And I think it kind of takes an outsider's eye as well to come in, me being an Aussie, going, what are you doing? Why are you undercutting yourself like this? You are the most established theatre company in Las Vegas. Vegas is one of the biggest brands globally for entertainment. Let's put the city we love in our name. And it was a bit of a battle, but we got there. And now, you know, the name of the city we love is in our name, and we tell stories by and for Las Vegas. It's there. It's a simple kind of equation.
So can you tell us
But it's also built for growth. You know, that was my thing. It's like we can't keep doing this. The resources are not there. We have a 80, 90 seat theatre, depending on the configuration. And I came in, and at the when I came in, it was a completely volunteer organisation. And when I came in, I said, look, we're going to start paying artists. So actors will start getting a stipend, directors, designers, getting a stipend sort of on par with what's being paid with theatres our size around the country. And so it was a big lift for us to do that. And we've continued to do it since that time. But there's not been enough money to kind of pay artists and administrators. So our administrative side of the company is still completely volunteer, which has to change because the burnout is kind of real at this point. And I've been in a position to be able to steward us to the point, but actually it's time for growth. It's time for the city now to turn up and say, we appreciate what you do, we love it, we see its value, we see its impact, and I'm going to support that with resources. And if the city doesn't turn up and do that, I'm not talking about the city of Las Vegas, I'm talking about our community, the people who come to the shows. If we can't turn up and do that, then we're not a city who really wants it. So this next project I'm working on is kind of about growth, and we'll know pretty soon about whether the city's going to turn up. And
so we're going to talk about that, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about like what the kind of stuff that you program. So you just said, so basically you have it's a pretty small space. It's under 100 seat. And what's interesting to me is you have like a whole lot of different stuff happening depending on the day of the week, the time. You have like a first like early evening programming, a late evening programming. I can't think of an equivalent in a New York theater that would be like that. It feels very versatile and it's very different audiences. So the two shows that I saw in November where there was the new musical, The House on Watch Hill by Richard Oberacker and Robert Taylor, whom New Yorker would know, and actually a lot of other people, because they did the musical Bandstand that was on Broadway a few years ago. And they're both in Vegas, so they premiere their musical with you guys. And then I also saw Late Night. So that's actually very, I would say, can reach a very broad audience in terms of age. It's kind of like a memory musical set in the 80s about something that happened. It's inspired by something that happened to Richard Oberacker in the 80s. But then in the Late Night, I saw a show called Abandon, which was, I counted, I think, the list of like the trigger warning list outside at something like 78 items. And I'm pretty sure I saw them all in the show, actually, which was amazing. And it was really, I mean, I would say it was both very simple and very sophisticated in its, like, the sound design was one of the best that I've seen in a very, very long time. But clearly not an all ages show. It was definitely very adult show. So how do you, and you have other special nights, like how do you arrange all that?
Well, look, I mean, that came about from sort of this come to Jesus moment that I had early on going, well, look, if I'm going to keep turning up doing this, what do we need to do to make it sustainable? The philanthropic component wasn't there, so we leaned into earned income, and so it became about sort of programming the room like a Vegas showroom in many ways, just going, okay, well, what are the available slots? This is our little jewel box. So if we're rehearsing in here, if we're building a set in here, then we can't program it and we can't really use it to its full value. So starting to program work that could exist at different times of the day, so we could get 2 or 3, performance sessions out of the room. But also alongside that, going, well, it takes a lot to put on anything. And so if you're turning up and executing ideas, what ideas do we want to execute? And really, for me, it's the most exciting thing is about executing the ideas of Las Vegas. What exists here? Who lives here? What do they think about? What stories did they want to tell? Again, it's about place. It's about incubating and nurturing our people and actually saying you have value, that, we've seen ourselves for so long as a city where good ideas come from somewhere else, but actually we have a really unique perspective on the world and good ideas come from here too. And so investing in that kind of ethic. And so we got about, Abandon was created here from a now resident, Jana Weimer, and her co-producers. Jana was a part of Zombie Joe's theatre in LA for a long time and created a show called Urban Death, which is not a dissimilar format to Abandon. Richard Oberacker and Robert Taylor. Richard is the music director of Car and lives here. And then we also produced a show called Cluelesque, which is a burlesque parody of the movie Clue that was written by our associate artistic director that, we brought back for 2 seasons last year because it did so well and may actually have another life ahead of it in the commercial market. It might find its way into one of those theaters over there on the Strip. And so that's how this kind of, from the outside, it can seem a little ad hoc. And in some ways it is, because what you're doing is giving agency to the people and the ideas and the people who care most about their ideas. So, that's it. When resources are few, you really need people to kind of turn up when the going gets tough. And if they don't have an idea that they're behind to turn up for, then the burden falls on, the company to kind of pick up the slack, which ends up being me.
Do you find, Daz, that are there people who is part of your artistic community, people who find their way to Las Vegas in some kind of performing capacity, but have real theater backgrounds that they still want to explore? Or are you, is that a resource for you? Or are you finding people who just are discovering theater as artists and want to, figure out if they can make that happen for themselves because, they just want to expand what they do?
I mean, it's a combination of both. There are some world-class performers who find themselves here because they're booked on big shows. We call it the golden handcuffs when you get booked on a long-running show, because you get a great paycheck and you get to turn up and you do something that you love, that you've trained for. But creative people like new challenges. And so it can be tough to turn up and do the same show year after year. And so what we do provides an outlet for those folks. They often have great contracts and flexibility built into them. So they can leave, a show with Cirque or with Blue Man Group and come in and do, whatever, do a play like The Father, which we produced a few years ago. Which
You mean Strindberg?
No, Florian Zeller.
Oh, Florian Zeller. Yeah, that's also a serious play. Yeah. About Alzheimer's.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love the idea that you have someone who's like working on Cirque du Soleil during the day or early evening and then like goes over to do a Florian Zeller show.
Yeah.
Because what's impressive to me is like the talent pool is incredible. And not, performers, but also in terms from the creative side, like lighting designers or set and costumes. Like on The House on Watch Hill, like your creative team was pulled from, they all have like big credits on the Strip. And I love I love this back and forth. I mean, in New York, of course, people do Broadway and off Broadway. Like they work everywhere. They will, but I think it's like even more diverse and more extreme in Vegas because it's not just people on the strip and in your company, but they're also doing corporate events. There's this whole life of corporate events and conventions and product launches that is not. I think that is more separate in New York, and that border doesn't seem to be as strong in Vegas. People will do like, oh yeah, I'm playing in the band, and we're doing an IBM product launch, and then I'm playing in the band for, a musical with your company or Majestic and it seems very like the back and forth seems very real.
It is very real. I mean, you can cobble together a really great artistic life that allows you to pay the bills. The cost of living is lower here for sure, but also there are plenty of corporate opportunities that I know a lot of, creatives take advantage of and are really, grateful then for the opportunity to come in. We can never pay them what they get on their rates for the corporates, but we get to offer them a creative outlet that they don't necessarily get when they're, providing sound for the speaker of some whatever organization inside a convention hall. But then they can come over to us in the evening and do a sound design on a new musical that's never been heard before with, like 7 actual teenagers kind of driving the cast. And, it's exciting for them. And they say as much. They're kind of grateful for our presence and for the ability to be able to do that.
One thing I'm curious about is, we talk about in New York and so much about, the need for occasional, pieces that are just pure entertainment, escapism. That's kind of a gap to be filled sometimes, and we're sort of relieved when it happens. But in Vegas, there's so much. That's sort of the stock in trade. I mean, every show in town is really about that. You're not getting, Hedda Gabler at the MGM Grand.
Oh my God, I'd love to see that.
So
Love to
do
see
you have to
that.
counter program? I mean, is it like? Do you think? Where do we fit in this? Obviously yours is a community based, is more than a tourist based, I'm sure, audience. But like, how serious can you go in terms of what you offer?
It's such a tough question. I mean, I was thinking about this a lot this morning, Peter, and, looking ahead and wondering where programming lives for us, because there's a couple of really challenging pieces that we're slated to produce that I'm really excited about. And Vegas has never really shied away, our audience has never shied away from the challenging pieces. And maybe it is partly because of that reason that we get the froth over there, that the entertainment is available to us. I don't think, I mean, it really comes down to, what stories do you want to tell? I think as soon as you start second guessing what audiences want, you end up in this trap of trying to please the, like fill the coin buckets and fill the joy buckets. And, you end up trying to please everyone and it's impossible. So what's the vision? I mean, what's the vision and what are the stories that we want to tell is the question that we have to come back to. So our audience has really never shied away from challenging material. Like a play like The Father, it can be seen as quite a challenging piece, but it was one of our biggest sellers in our history.
Fascinating.
We did a production of No Exit years ago, before my time. That is definitely a challenging play, but people loved it. They turned up for it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a lot of the companies around the country? I mean, I think one of the positive effects of COVID is that the American companies started cooperate with each other a little bit more. They started doing more co-productions, pooling their resources. But I feel like you guys were a little ahead of the curve because the 3 main professional companies in Vegas, you guys, A Public Fit and Majestic, you've long been working together. You're like, you trade talent, you like co-produce, you people go back and forth. There seems to be like a very close knit. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you also well, it helps that you have very distinct identities. You're not really, I mean, each one, you're not really doing the same things at all.
Right.
So because you've done stuff with both. You did Dancing at Lunasa, I think, with Public Fit.
Yeah, we've worked with Public Fit a few times, and I've worked with them as an actor, and I've worked with Troy over at Majestic as an actor, and we've co-produced shows together. I mean, and this is a fairly new development in the history of Las Vegas. There was a real sort of parochial attitude before that about people really protecting their turf, and holding on to the audience that they had been able to grow over the years and not wanting to share. And I think, I'll give myself a little credit for it, but coming in as an outsider and going, hey, we're all trying to build the same thing here. And to be honest, we're not even building it for ourselves. Like, you look at the timeline trajectory of what we're trying to build, and we're really building it for the next generation. So there's a part that you just have to remove your ego from it and go, okay, well, how can we share resources and share the messaging of what we're doing and build a theatre ecology and a storytelling ecology that will serve our city when we are, old and dead, or just, no longer relevant in whenever that happens, which I'm getting enough gray hair to
Hardly.
So we share resources, we help each other out whenever we can, because I think the understanding is there that at some point one of us will either sort of rise up and become this first regional company, or all of us will, or none of us will. But the foundations we're laying are going to be crucial to whatever that development is.
Can you tell us a little bit? You were alluding to like a project that you're working on, which involves teaming up with another. Like, how much can you tell us a little bit about that in terms of what the idea is? Because I think that would be a big new step.
Yeah. So I've been talking for years about growth. How do we grow? Where do we grow? What do we grow into? An 80-seat theatre, there's no model that works in terms of sustainability when you're especially producing new ideas that need to find an audience. So what's the next step? And the next step is, well, a larger venue of some kind. So we've been looking for years at the possibility of sort of moving into a larger space and where that might be and how that might happen, whether it's sort of a ground up development. Do we want to stay here in the Arts District, which is this really rich, fertile ground for what we've been doing? And in fact, we've been there for 12 years now. We're the last remaining tenant of the Arts Factory, Arts Square and the Arts Factory. And we've been telling people for 12 years to come downtown to the Arts District at a time when the area is still really stigmatized. There's still lots of people in the suburbs who don't want to come down there because they're worried about parking or safety or, all those things that sort of urban areas, people who live in the suburbs are scared of. And so we've been looking for growth possibilities. There's this potential. There's a building 2 blocks down from us. It was built in 2016. It's currently operating as a cinema. It's an 8-cinema multiplex independent cinema that really has never taken off. It's really never done well. And so the owners are looking for a new use case for it. And myself and a few other companies in town went and met with the owners, and we pitched them the idea of turning it into a performing arts center and turning it from a cinema complex to a live performance complex. And they're New Yorkers, actually, the guys who own it, and they were really interested in the idea. So we've been moving forward on that. A couple of weeks ago, signed a letter of intent, which officially sort of began lease negotiations on the building to begin developing it into a new home for live performance in the Arts District. And we're not alone. I mean, there's a couple of other projects in town. There's the Huntridge Theatre, which is an old Art Deco theatre in town that's currently being developed into a multi-venue performing arts centre. There's also a group called Nevada School for the Arts who's developing a ground-up live performance venue. There's a group here called The Space who've been running a small venue over near the Strip that have just sort of launched this new capital campaign to build a new live performing arts centre. So there's something in the air, and there's a need to fill, clearly. And I don't know that all of these projects are going to come to fruition, but this is the one I'm, staking my time into right now.
I also think, when I read about Nevada and I read about, obviously even during a presidential election year, I hear a lot about the union movement in Nevada, obviously the hotel workers and all those people. And there's this very strong Latino, obviously, community in Las Vegas and in the state. How much of an effort has been made to program for those communities? Do they have a theatrical interest? They are kind of the bedrock residential part of the population, or one of them. Is that something that you guys think about?
Yeah, we've been working with a group recently and programming Spanish language plays and opening our theatre to a group called Nuevalandia, which is a Spanish language sort of dance and entertainment night. That really provides entertainment for the Spanish-speaking population. And there is a huge potential for growth there because, if we're looking to sort of disrupt these, white spaces, theatres are traditionally kind of white spaces, but the population of Las Vegas is really extremely diverse, and the creative population is also, and like the university population, UNLV consistently is like the first or second most diverse campus in the nation, and so to not be able to collaborate with the Spanish-speaking community is not only shooting yourself in the foot from a business standpoint, but it's not on mission. Like, we're a 501c3. Our duty is to kind of provide a service for the community. So having a really honest look at who that community is and making sure that you're servicing them and serving them is a huge part of our mission. And so, like being able to move into a new venue where at the moment we have 2,000 square feet, and to move into a new venue where there's potentially 3, 4, 5 performance venues, rehearsal areas, back of house, event spaces, opens up new possibilities for programming. And so a huge part of this is really, there's a huge I don't know factor to it. And I'm someone, I've started as an actor, I became a director and then moved up into sort of leadership, and so have kind of been making it up as I go. And so I'm really okay with saying I don't know what the next step is, but I see that there's a need to fill, and so I also see that I'm in the position to be able to fill it. So I'm going to step up and keep moving forward and see if we can't make something happen here and make space, because amazing things happen when you make space. So if this project moves forward and we get these additional venues, what can happen in them? I mean, I have some strong ideas about what we could do as Vegas Theatre Company in there, but there's ideas that I could never even conceive of once you put it out to the community and go, hey, there's this space here. What do you want to do? What stories do we want to tell?
It's interesting to hear you talk about like the mood in New York is so like doom and gloom when it comes to theater. Like it feels like there's this like it's just this weight, often, not always, but like it's people are very concerned. The audience, are they coming back? What's happening? Are things too expensive? Who's making white theater for whom? And it's just really interesting to hear this talk of like expanding and building and bringing people in.
And Daz is making a personal fortune doing this. So there's, so they're.
I would like to point out that one night, when I was at the house on Watch Hill, like you were pointing out you had like a video floor.
Yeah.
And you said, "Oh yeah, I bought that at auction," and your husband was fixing it, like your husband was down, like tinkering with the video floor that you bought at auction for like, what was it, like $300?
$400.
$400.
I mean, it's one of the advantages of living in Las Vegas and getting the cast-offs of the entertainment industry here.
That's right. I had not
And
thought
yeah,
of that,
it's a
but that's-
family sport. My husband's all in on it. I mean, there'll come a point I'll need to start making some sort of income.
Is he still singing Motown?
He is. Yeah. Yeah. He sings for our supper, literally.
I love that.
yeah.
But no, I really like, and I also like the fact that you're like, if for sure, like you have a quote unquote season, but I think that's also very ahead. Like it's very flexible. The season, if a show is finding an audience, you extend it or you bring it back. It's very like,
That's very European.
Well, I mean, it's just, I did it. I did it because, look, when you're making new things, you've got to build an audience for them, and they need a longer runway, And in fact, all art kind of needs a longer runway. You can't put on a show for 3 weeks and then be dismayed that like no one came in the first 2.5 weeks and the last 2 nights were sold out. The biggest marketing tool we have, and any theatre owner would tell you this, is word of mouth. So it takes time.
I feel like there's something there's a marketing aspect missing from other producers, because you can say, direct from Las Vegas, the house on Watch Hill. You know what I mean? It's like there's all this Vegas stuff that that really resonates. And people have a natural sort of there's a magnetic effect. People want to. They're curious about
Yes.
how things are made in Vegas, and so I feel like the ways in which you're growing your vision, Daz, are so inspiring to hear. It's that you've stayed with this, and that you're actually, that this is something that has a forward momentum. That's a very moving thing for a theater person, not from Vegas.
COVID challenged everyone, right? All the theaters around the country, and we saw a lot of theaters go away, big, medium, small, and there was this real sort of come to Jesus moments about what are we making, who are we making it for, and how are we making it? What's the model? And the model is broken. And that's, and so there's lots of theatre companies out there now kind of exploring new ways to produce, to find audience and keep audience. And so we've just got to keep trying things and throwing stuff at the wall. But if we don't come back to the essential idea, which is actually nurturing the writer, really, what is the idea? Where does it spring from? Where does that person spring from? That idea is what we need to invest in. And so if we're not truthfully investing in that idea, then we're not on mission. We're not trying to build a new model. We're being diverted by commercial necessities or financial constraints or whatever those huge pressures are. And the pressures are huge. I run a tiny company. Our operating budget is $460,000, which has grown, which has tripled in the last 3 years. But to sit at the top of some of those big companies and have so many hundreds of staff kind of relying on you, and to have this huge payroll every week must be really, really daunting.
Indeed.
Especially in a system like in the US where we are not supported by the state. I mean, yes, there's state funding, but look at that. I mean, is that going to go away now because, every theatre's mission is a DEI mission? Really, it's built into the DNA of who we are, to give voice to the underrepresented people in our society. And so leaning into the commercial model is a necessity, but being small and nimble allows me to go, what if we invest in this idea and we don't know how it's going to go forward? We give it a longer runway and we give it a chance to kind of grow. So, Abandon came back this fall for its 3rd time, and it had changed 3 times, and we'll probably bring it back again. And every time it's come back, it's been stronger and and more ready for prime time, and now there's possibilities for it maybe in San Francisco, maybe in LA, maybe over in Europe, but it's only because of that investment of time that we put into it that it's kind of ready to be shared.
Our time is getting short with you, Des, but I wanted to say something about Elizabeth taking the time seriously to do a piece like she did about Las Vegas theater. I think about how it, from the New York Times to focus that kind of attention. I don't know what the payback is in terms of the psychic income that comes from having that kind of focus, but it's reassuring, Elizabeth, when you go to a city and that you highlight these companies in a really intelligent and entertaining way, that it does help.
I would really like what I would love is if someone could say use that article and like maybe it would help them a grant or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I
Right.
think, there is some kind of institutional weight no matter what one thinks of it, there's a certain institutional weight. Like when you looking at a grant application, I was like, oh yeah, we were mentioned there, and I would love for that to help in some way. And I always come back from those trips so energized.
She's been talking about it for months.
I mean, really, the value of that is I don't know how to sort of what exactly it is, but you're right. There's a huge weight behind it, and Elizabeth, you didn't have to shine a light on us. There are so many things happening around the country, around the world, that are in your
okay, no,
purview.
you guys are getting
And so
embarrassing. You're
the
embarrassing
fact-
me
no,
now.
No, the fact that you were curious enough about what we were doing, and then pitched the idea to your editor, and they were like, "Okay, go for it." You came out and you shone a light on us and on Majestic and Public Fit and on the whole theatre ecology here that journalists in our own town aren't even doing. I mean, the RJ doesn't even have a reviewer. We have
There
no.
you go.
We
There you
needed to.
go.
Oh, that's something I wanted to ask. But yeah, because one of the things you had mentioned, and I didn't have space in the article to mention that, but you had talked about when we were talking, you said there was no review culture in Vegas, and that was a problem. And I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, critics, good riddance. But well,
No.
they can come in handy.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure you guys have waxed lyrical for hours on what the importance of the critic, and the critic has value, not just for sort of bringing in audience, but for allowing that audience to be able to interpret the artwork in a way that they didn't necessarily have the tools to do. Like it's this.
Or just to know that
you're
it's
You're
there.
the entry point for our audience, and so to not have that kind of culture is really disappointing. I mean, it will grow, but we need to not complain about it. We need to create work that is worthy of being reviewed.
And we weren't, the idea wasn't to embarrass you, Elizabeth, but I do think that with journalism, theater journalism is it's not in ascendance. And so this is really, it's vital that people hear that, that you're doing that kind of piece. And maybe that means the next time we talk to Daz, he'll have, a W-2 form to show us, that he's actually
I'm on payroll.
Mission accomplished. That's
he's
it.
not doing this out of his back pocket. But anyway, we should wrap this up, my dear.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always, I just love this kind of dispatches from around the country. There's so much, as I say, every time I come back energized from those trips. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, anytime, and I'll keep you updated on any movement forward. And there will be some value in that article. I mean, I've had people reaching out going, "Oh, hey, I read about you in the New York Times," who've never kind of mentioned me or the theater or what I do before. People in the neighborhood, and it's got a wide reach. Did people read it? Like, do you get sort of any sort
I
of readership
don't have access
data?
to those figures,
Right.
so I don't know.
Of course they did.
I hope so.
Of course they did. Of course
But-
they did.
I was trying to push for, to have some kind of big photo of some showgirl, like a little bit deceiving campaign, but, anyway. But, thank you so much.
Thanks, Daz. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
It has been a pleasure. I'll update you on any further movement, and hopefully I've got some good news in a few months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
You know, Peter, I always love hearing about people around the country who are making theater in kind of contexts that are not necessarily very supportive, where you think, how can they pull it
Right.
off? And somehow they manage to find a space, an audience, material. They do classics or they do new things that they somehow find or commission, and it's happening. And it's so refreshing to me to see that this is still happening in a national context that seems to be getting worse and worse by the minute. And yet, here we are.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love reading your stories when you do it. I mean, they're the one thing that makes me nostalgic about covering theater is finding those stories and actually not only going out and doing it, but delivering a great report about it, and that's really hard work. So, my hat's off to you, and also to our listeners for staying with us and listening to our dialogues with these interesting theater makers, and we hope you'll listen to us next time.
And tell all your friends how good this podcast is. What do you think of my pleading voice? Is that convincing? I'm trying to channel Cosette or something.
Yeah, it's very moving. I'm near tears right now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's good.
We can be found, and if you're listening, hopefully you knew this, at marksvincentelli.substack.com. That's right, the same place that people with many more followers than we do podcast
Listen,
from.
we're only like 50 million followers behind. I mean, we can totally make that up in what, like a couple of months? That's all it'll take us.
Right.
That's really, yes. And the riches we'll have will be completely,
Exciting.
I mean, and we'll still do it. We'll be super rich, but we'll still do it out of,
Absolutely, for the people.
for the people. For the people. We're doing it for the people. But anyway, you can also find us on social media. I'm pretty much, at this point, I'm only on Blue Sky. That's the only one that I pay attention to. It seems to be still decent, or at least my experience of it is. And Peter, what are you on?
I'm on Threads and Blue Sky, and it depends on the day which one seems more responsive. So I just sort of play it by ear.
Right, yeah, I guess I do that too. And we use our real name, so you can totally ask us questions. We're open to very, I would say, non-antagonistic questions. And do not ask us for Venmo address, because we will give it to you. And I think that's it for today.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.